and welcome back to the AOS crowd. Hey! This is part 2 of our German Club Championship review with special guest Tobi.
Hello.
If you don't know what we're doing, then check out part 1. It'll be linked up there. It'll be linked in the description probably as well, depending on whether I'm smart enough to actually put it there. But yeah, we've talked about our lists, our preparation, our mindset going into the tournament in part 1 already, so make sure to check that out. As I said, links probably everywhere. If you're subscribed, you've probably seen it already. And by now, it's probably available as a podcast as well. Praise be!
Yay!
Yay! So yeah, we left you off in part 1 talking about our round 1 matchups. We're pretty eager to see who we're going to get. The meta and the field has tightened up from last year a little bit, I feel like. We were expecting to have a much harder time, both because of our roster changes and of how everyone else prepared for the tournament and how the tournament scene evolved in Germany and Austria as well. So yeah, we were pretty hyped. And our hype was pretty well met, actually. When they did the random draw, we were drawn third. And we were...
I think third or second. Yeah, quite early.
We were drawn third, I believe, because we played on table 2.
Yeah, table 2.
Yeah. So, for our first round of the tournament, we're playing on table 2 against Tabletop Club Dresden, a wonderful bunch of players we already played last year. Basically, we had a rematch. We also played them in the first round as well. So
that was funny, yeah.
It was a funny coincidence. But yeah, last year the result was clearly in our favor. We weren't necessarily too sure about this year. But yeah, Toby, why don't you talk a bit about our pairing process?
Yeah, so as usual with the first match, that's the one you can prepare the most for, right? We knew the battle plans, we knew their armies as they knew of our armies, and usually when you go into this, you of course do estimations as in every team, as in every good team, which we are. You do estimations, which we had as well. There for each battle plan and for each of the armies. But I think we just went with the general plan that we discussed in the previous video as well. And that was still that me and Benedict will try to get a very good win. And then we will try to get the players who are very battle plan dependent, like our Nurgle list and our Sylvaneth list, on good battle plans for them. And then, unfortunately, the ogre just gets what's left. So that was the main game plan. And we did this in this as well. So for the first round, the battle plans were Geomantic Pulse, Every Step is Forward, and Towers in the Tundra. So 2 people played Pulse, 2 people played Every Step, and 1 person then plays Towers. And if some of the viewers are not don't know how pairings work, I'm not sure if I should explain it here completely, but basically you have some defenders who definitely play on that battle plan, and then the opponent can put 2 attackers down, and then the one who put the team whose defender it is can choose one of the 2 attackers who they in the end play against. The other one goes back into the hand. Both people do this at the same time, and then in the end, in a 5-man tournament, there will be basically just 1 card in each hand left at the end, and these 2 hand cards basically play them against each other on the last battle plan, so on Towers.
Yes.
So with that in mind, basically you can decide a bit. You can usually decide at least 2 of your matchups. You can decide for 2 of your players at least which battle plan they are, the defenders, and that's how we went. So on this one, for example, we knew that Nurgle is incredibly good on pulls. Our Nurgle list, because it just likes to stand in the middle and score points, which on pulls is pretty good.
Yeah.
So that's what we did. And then we have Every Step is Forward, which is quite mobile, but it's also, I think it's fine for most of our lists.
Mhm.
So that's just, I don't want to do this on in every
Yeah.
round, but that's just how we tackled this with the battle plans. And then in the end, we did the pairings. We prepared a bit the night before.
Yeah.
Just thinking through a few possibilities. In the end, it's always as usual. The opponent team does not actually do what you expected it to do. I think same as here. I think here it was
Yeah.
the same, right? So in the end, we had. Okay, let me try to get this right. So we had our Nurgle that played against a Seraphon,
Yes.
but that was on poles, so it was a good
Yes.
battle plan for our Nurgle, so we were fine with that, so that was decent. We had you played.
I played Towers in the Tundra against Tzeentch
Tzeentch,
with 40 pink horrors.
which sounds horrible.
Yeah.
And it was kind of horrible,
Yeah.
but it was also fine in the end.
Yes, but we'll get into that shortly.
Yeah, we'll get into that later. And then I played against KO on Every Step is Forward. So that was not the best matchup from me out of these because I had Seraphon and Tzeentch. Of course, Corn wants to play against the Magic Hand army.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was that. And then we had the Sylvaneth against.
I believe it was. Ooh. Was it Nurgle?
They had. Or was it Soulblight? They had Soulblight as well.
Soulblight. No, the Soulblight player was exchanged for the Stormcast player.
Ah, okay. Yeah, right. Yeah, they had Stormcast. Yeah, and I think he played. We're not good prepared.
No.
OBR was also in the mix. Oh, did he play OBR?
Yeah,
maybe?
he played OBR, and our Ogre
Archives.
player played against Stormcast Eternals on Pulse, which...
On Pulse, yeah.
Yeah, which, as a Stormcast player and an Ogre player, I knew he would win that. He had the bodies, and he had the time.
So the Stormcast list that they played wasn't dragons.
Yes.
It had only a Night Draconis, and then it was... and actually they had 2 dragons and a Night Draconis. Good mix. It was quite damage heavy because they had Annihilators with Grand Hammers and Fulminators.
Yes.
So it was actually pretty damage heavy.
I believe that the goal of that army was to smash off Nurgle as best as possible. Dealing max damage, also like eliminating other pretty tough armies. But
just get rid of, have a lot of damage against wounds, basically. So, yeah, and in the end, we can talk about our games.
Just really quick, because mine was very, very unfortunate. I played Francine, who played Disciples of Tzeentch, Kairos, and Blue Scribes, and a Gaunt Summoner on disc. She mentioned ahead of the game that she was not happy that she was playing this. At least it was Towers, where it's just 2 objectives. But she apparently had agreed with her team that she wouldn't be playing the Stormcast. And her team promised her, you won't be playing the Stormcast. And in the end, she did play the Stormcast list. But it was over pretty quickly. I outdropped her. I took off all her heroes turn 1. And then she just tried to take objectives from me, tried to score a couple of battle tactics. In the end, I got all of my tactics done. I even managed to score the one where you force an enemy unit to flee in battle shock with a bravery characteristic of 10, taking down a block of 20 pink horrors, down to brimstones, and then even less brimstones, so they would flee. And that game was pretty long, just because Tzeentch Horrors always takes a long time to remove and place back models, but then again, we knew how the game would go, so
it was long for your games, let's say. I'm pretty sure the other players played longer from us. I played against KO, which was an okay matchup. It was a melee heavy KO, so was lots of Endrinriggers in 3 frigates. It was I think 2 frigates
Yeah, and
and the
one
gun hauler,
gun hauler. Yeah.
and then lots of units of Endrinriggers and Brock.
Yes.
And that was it's a damage heavy army, so it's a bit scary for Khorne, especially because he was of course lower drops than me. But it's a fine matchup for my list because I have a very aggressive Khorne list, which has a lot of focus on killing heroes, for example, with the skull cannons. And I had 2 boom thirsters, and as soon as the boom goes off for the boats, it's horrible. Also, therefore the list also has quite a bit of damage, with Scarbrand in it as well. And so the game was. It wasn't over fast, but I think there was just a few deciding key points, and that was of course the prior rolls, of course, as he turn 1 I didn't do much, he just shot, and then I won prior into 2 where he wanted to be aggressive, but I then could be aggressive because of course everyone who knows Khorne, it's faster than people think. So basically a double moving Scarbrand with 3d6 charge can actually be quite fast. And that's what happened. Took out a boat with some guys inside. Then
In one
slap
hit.
back. Yeah. In a slap back, of course, Scarbrand died. I still had stuff. He got the double, killed another thirster, so I had 1 thirster left. But then with enough damage and everything, I managed to take out enough of the KO stuff, and then basically won the game. I'm not even sure how big I won, but I won, I think, decent. I think like 15-5 or something, or 17-3, something around that area. Yeah, so it was a decent game. Yeah. I'm never happy to play KO, to be honest. It's always dicey, and no one really likes getting shot off.
Yeah,
So,
it's a very low interaction army with your opponent, I feel like.
this list was a bit better with Endrinriggers, but I'm gonna be honest, it's not that much different because these guys just strike first.
Yeah.
So they just shoot, fight you, and then there's nothing left at the spot where they fought, and then you can go in, so it's not that much difference from shooting. The only difference is at least he needs to come a bit closer, which is nice for Khorne.
That's true.
You're in range for summoning. But yeah, that was my game. The other games we probably should be a bit faster here, but
Yeah, the games went pretty well. I don't think we lost a single game that round. The Ogre player, as expected, outscored the Stormcast player at the end, because that's just how Pulse works. If you win the prios late in the game, you can always outscore your opponent. And same with Nurgle. From the middle to the end, he basically outscored the Seraphon player, who I think failed a tactic because of a Croak miscast as well. So it's unlucky, but at this point you take that. Yeah. And then finally the Sylvaneth OBR game was pretty tight, I believe, and a few key rolls decided in favor of our Sylvaneth player. In the end, we did manage to cap the round, something important to mention, which we forgot in the last video, that the cap for the event was not, or the maximum of 100 points was divided for the cap to be 65 to 35 instead of the classic 75 to 25.
So the cap was very low for winning or very high for losing. So this means that we kept quite a lot of our multiple of our games just because it was so low. So cap isn't that impressive, let's say. It's still good, but it's a bit less impressive, let's say.
Something that also does is it pushes the field across the board together a little bit, and it makes the win, draw, loss bracket, which the event used, so much more important, because scoring high in your bracket still meant that you were still up against good opponents.
Yeah. Exactly.
But moving on, we were fresh off 5 wins against Tabletop Club Dresden. thank you again to them for playing. We had a wonderful time, and we'd love to rematch next year. Uh,
Not sure
and
if they do, but yeah, we love to.
I think we sort of gave them a dampener on wanting to play Warhammer. But yeah, second round we played against Hammer und Schild e.V., basically a tabletop club from Munich, which is also in the south of Germany, Bavaria, that region. Most of it, you will probably know it from the Oktoberfest and such. But the players of that club are nothing akin to the drunkards you see there. Most of them are very, very skilled and impressive players with tournament-winning records and huge performances at large tournaments. Just thinking about Raccoon Rumble, one of their players came in the top 10 there. One of their players, Max, is renowned as being the host of the Ethercasts, and a KO nut job. But yeah, going into round 2, we were a bit iffy and uneasy because in round 2, the battle plans, or one of the battle plans, was a bit
Yeah, so we had so the first battle plan was no reward without risk. No problems there for our list. Second one was a bit more problematic, and that was the Frigid Zephyr, which is the one where you cannot see your opponent outside of 12 inches, and models cannot fly. So, of course, we had one army who was horrible on this one, and this was Benedict, right?
Yeah.
The good thing about this army is we played opponents who had 2 armies who were horrible on this battle.
Yes.
So that was the good part about it. Whereas for us, it was just 1 army. Ironically, though, that's exactly what happened. We got the 1 army, Benedict, on that battle plan, which was actually not good from a pairing perspective. But
I think in the end, it did work out well for us, because otherwise we had to sacrifice another matchup in the first round of the pairings, and that would have meant that we had difficulties, managing out the rest of how the pairing process was going to go.
Yeah, so...
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'll start. So basically, and on this we had me going up against the Nurgle on no reward without risk. So that was a bit fat lad Nurgle list as well.
Yes.
Which was a win in the end for me. Not as big because it's because Nurgle can score can hold out quite well. But they also had Bellacore, so it was not that different from our list actually.
Yeah.
They didn't have Glotkin though.
Yeah, which is a huge bonus for corn lists, right?
Yeah, not necessarily. With Bloodbind and Murderlust, you're actually often fine actually with Glotkin, but it still makes it a bit easier, let's say. Then we had the other no reward without risk was our Nurgle, who was the defender there, of course.
Yes.
No. Played.
It was Sylvaneth versus KO.
Oh yeah, right. Because we did him on Frigid Zephyr. Yes.
Exactly.
Correct. So that was Sylvaneth versus KO, and that was
also a win for.
Right, yeah.
It was a win for our Sylvaneth. He played the game very, very well, and I'm super proud of him for doing so, because Max, as one of the most, or one of the KO players with the most routine in the German-speaking Warhammer community, is quite an impressive opponent. And the list he was playing with, how many gun haulers?
Yeah, it was 8 or 9 gun haulers, I think.
Yeah.
Which he really liked. In the end, wasn't the best maybe to take over the tournament, but
it did look quite fun.
They took it. Yeah, it did. It does look good. It does look good on the table. That's true. Yeah, but the Sylvaneth did very well, and And then in the end, KO managed failed to kill Beltanos and failed
Yeah.
their grand strategy because of that. And Beltanos is just hard to kill if you just have Rend 2 max.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Tough cookie.
yeah. And then we had you on
Yes.
Frigid Zephyr
Versus OBR.
on paper a horrible matchup because it was OBR and it was also had the command trait
Aura of Sterility.
Aura of Sterility, where everything against shooting, everything with wholly within 12 inches is -1 to hit and wound.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's on paper that with Archai, who are actually with fly incredibly fast, no commands within 3 inches.
Strike
That
first
is
as
scary.
well.
Strike first with an 8-inch charge. That is usually incredibly scary. And also Null Myriad, right?
Yeah.
So
I did take the Comet, which is huge for hero damage. Didn't necessarily.
useless as well.
Yeah.
There. But yeah, you can talk about it.
Yes. Basically, when we rolled off for attacker and defender, as per the pack, the defender was allowed to set up the terrain according to the map, but we were allowed to twist and turn the terrain pieces as we saw fit. And so I decided to create a choke point along the middle of the board with 2 large terrain pieces, still all in accordance to the map we received. And yeah, in turn 1, decided to drop all my spread shots, tried to kill as much stuff as possible, managed to take out the Death Riders, so that's 1 tactic less, managed to take out the Immortus Guard, so that's 2 tactics less, and then it was just damage mitigation, trying to see whether the Squall would lift. My game plan then at some point was just, okay, I've created the choke point, I've sat my entire army behind it, I'm just going to start pushing 2 dogs or 2 units of Gryph-hounds into the choke point and basically say, your Archai can charge the dogs, you're not getting to anything else because you can't fly. So that was the game plan there. And in the end, it did swing in my favor pretty heavily. The Squall only lifted in battle round 5, I believe, and by that point, he had lost his general to 5 Vigilors who bravely charged in and blew him up. Because Archai just killed them in the return, and Stormcast Eternals explode, so I had a great time. And his Archon detonated himself, trying to get the 4-up Mortal Wound Ward off with a Primal Miscast.
Which is funny.
Yeah, why would you force that if there's a 6 and a 1 and you get plus a gazillion? Weird choice. I wouldn't have done it, but he had the balls to do it. I probably wouldn't have done it, but yeah, he Archon blew himself up, and by battle round 5, he had only 3 Archai left, which meant that I could comfortably outscore him. I think that keeps up my 100% win record with the shootcast list on Frigid Zephyr. I don't want to play that battle plan again. Please no. This is a message to my future captains. Don't do it. But yeah, I won that game 17-3 in the end.
Which is impressive, yeah.
Yes, I did have a good time though. I love playing Huno. He was great opponent as always, and we had a laugh, even though both of our dice were pretty fucking shitty. Yeah.
And then we had on, as we mentioned before, the nerdy was the defender on Frigid Zephyr, because they don't care about no shooting. They don't really care about it. And our opponents had the problem of they have 2 shooting armies. So one of them, in this one, if we don't take them as an attacker, right, if we don't take them, they have to play Frigid Zephyr, one of them, because we can decide that. So the one shooting army was already out, so the one left was IDK. And now they had the Sharks version, right? So Sharks and Turtle, I think.
Yeah.
And so in the end, we of course took that on Frigid Zephyr, because I had to put it down as attacker. and then the Nurgle played against it, and usually it's a tough matchup for Nurgle actually, but on this one, it was of course very good, and that's why mix of battle plan plus army onyx with against my army is sometimes very important, because IDK, not only can they not shoot, they can also not fly. So that's just the worst for them.
I
So
think
that was very good for us, yeah.
that hindered him as well because he placed his boats in the middle of the board, where he couldn't really get to objectives. So he had to take his thralls, or the one unit of Namarti that he had, put them in the boat in one turn, and then get them out of the boat in the next turn to have them even contest the middle objective.
Yeah.
So it was pretty funny. But still, rough matchup.
For IDK players, it's probably like a whole different world when normally you would just put your sharks down, right? Like 2 sharks in the front, the others there, and normally you just fly, you just move however you want.
Yeah.
And now suddenly you need to think about, oh damn, if this guy goes here, this guy can't go there. So that's a bit of a thing. So that definitely is tough to end on that battle plan. And then the last matchup was the
Ogres versus Sylvaneth.
Ogres versus Sylvaneth on limited resources. So as we mentioned before, the Ogres sometimes doesn't only get a horrible matchup, they sometimes even got it with a horrible battle plan as well, which this definitely was, because the tree list was lots of tree lords where you can't pile, and on limited resources, which 6 objectives, anyone can probably tell that that's definitely not good for ogres if they cannot pile, and if the Sylvaneth just always teleport away and you can't really get to them. I'm not sure how high he lost. He lost, unfortunately, but I'm not sure how high.
I think that was the game.
15.
Yeah, I think that was the only game he scored less than 7 points.
Yeah, I think so too. It is quite hard because of course the objectives on limited resources, just for people to remember, the objectives turn off if you score them twice. So with ogres who like to stand around, it can be quite tough. Of course you can walk on 2 other ones, but if the Sylvaneth just always teleports somewhere else, it's a bit it is a toughie there. But in the end it went well against them. We got 4 wins again and 1 loss, I think, right?
Yep. And I think we capped again 65 to 35. But this time it was much closer to the actual cap. I think it was 68, 32, somewhere along those lines, but not too sure in the end. So we were
round 2.
Pretty hyped. We were unbeaten day 1, and we were about to leave table 2 for the first time. Up until this point, we had played there, and on our 3rd round, we moved up to table 1.
Finally where we belong.
Yes, exactly. Right where we set our expectations.
Yeah, exactly.
Shoot for the stars and land on the moon. That's what they always say. But in round 3... We basically shot for Earth and in the end landed at the star. Yes, exactly. So, round 3, table 1, our match was against the Wiener Würfelwappler, the only other Austrian club, since technically the Storytellers are an Austrian club.
Yes,
not
officially Austrian.
Even though,
it was founded.
Yeah, exactly. Even though of the team that actually went, nobody was Austrian, technically. Because,
born... Not born and raised, just raised. Just raised. 2 of them,
So basically, we played against the Wiener Würfelwappler. They're guys from Vienna. They're a lovely bunch of blokes, and I have close ties to them since I'm in the Austrian national team, and these are the people I talk to like every single day. And going into the event, they were so hyped to represent with a different team than last year. They were confident that they were going to be performing better, and perform better they did. Their lists were really tough for us to match up against. KO 1-drop with Thunderers and Gotrek, a Lumineth Realm Lords list, which was very, very impressive, and played by a very routine player. Khorne, played by Joachim, one of my favorite humans. Shout out to Joachim. And I think Tzeentch and Nurgle as well. Both by very capable and wonderful players who I adore, absolutely, as you may be able to tell. I'm a patriot like that. And so going into this round, we were pretty, I think, antsy about what was going to happen. My personal favorite choice, my personal favorite was teasing their Lumineth player that I was going to shoot off Teclis turn 1, which we had discussed prior to the event. But yeah, Toby, why don't you run us through your game?
Yeah, so basically, for the pairings, so we had as battle plans, we had Power Flux as the first mission, then Lines of Communication, and then Nexus Collapse. Power Flux is an interesting one that usually only gets played in team tournaments as well. So that's the one where you can switch which objectives are active, either the back ones or the ones in the middle, and you get extra points for Antorian Acolytes. You get 1 point. You can get up to 2, but usually it's 1 point per turn additionally. So thinking about that, you also get a point if you kill an enemy wizard. So thinking about that, you kind of want armies there who actually have Antorian Acolytes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we had for that we had actually quite a bunch, because we had 4 of our armies has it. The Nurgle doesn't have it. Didn't have it in the starting army, but they can summon a Boxbringer. Starting in his list, I think starting to round 2, he can do that. Therefore, we went with, as a defender, if I remember correctly, we went with
Nurgle, I think.
Nurgle, yes. Yeah. We went with Nurgle, which is maybe not the first thing, because you can't score it in turn 1, right? But then again, the battle plan is usually played because it's centered around these 4 objectives that are not exactly in the middle, but basically around the middle. So it does play quite centric still. And it's also, Nurgle would have been good on Lines of Communication as well, but we just also wanted to throw a bit of a curveball sometimes. So in the end, we put Nurgle down there, and they also put down their Nurgle. Their Nurgle had a wizard in beforehand.
And 30 Plague Bearers.
So they had a lot of Plague Bearers. And then in the end, their Nurgle played against our ogres.
Yeah.
Which, and in this case, this was the one when in the previous video I mentioned that the ogres do have one very good thing, and that is if they just need to walk forward and punch you in the face, they are actually very good at it. And that was the perfect matchup, because 30 Plague Bearers was just, and mind you, he had Glotkin, yes.
Yeah.
But they still die at some point. So they did get punched pretty hard. That was the matchup that he won actually quite big. If I remember correctly. So that was very good for us. And then we had the Nurgle had to play against the Lumineth.
Yes. Which was a very, very close game in the end.
Which was a close game. Lumineth is very good on this battle plan, also has Antorian Acolytes. The matchup is not that good for Lumineth either, but because there's not many primaries to score there.
Yes.
Battle tactics are very important, and Lumineth are just better than Nurgle at that. So that was why it was a very close game, pretty sure, right?
Yeah, and a couple, I think, unlucky rolls on the Lumineth player's side meant that his Cathalar general with Shaman of the Chilled Lands exploded herself with a blizzard, and he didn't make the roll for the Phoenix Stone, and that basically cost him his grand strategy and meant that the Nurgle player could score his. It was interesting and rough rolls.
Yep.
The next
And then
matchup was my Swordcast Eternals versus Sluky, KO, one drop with Gotrek, and we agreed before the game that pretty much he would take turn 1 and he would try to shoot off Ionis. If he managed to do that, it would look pretty grim for me, but still manageable. And in the end, he did not kill Ionis turn 1, but a couple of movement errors on my side and a sloppy double turn from 2 into 3 meant that his, even though his Ironclad and his Thunderers and all of his heroes went, that 20 Arcanauts and Gotrek that were still left managed to clean up basically a lot of my army, which was a huge mistake on my part, and I'm beating myself up over it to this day. But yeah, moral of the story, don't underestimate Gotrek. And that was the only game I actually failed my grand strat, because Gotrek just sits in the middle and he doesn't die. And he doesn't die.
Yeah, he doesn't die. Not against your army.
No.
He might, but
it's very unlikely, put it that way.
Yeah.
And then the next one on lines was
so we had me against, so that was a bit, so we had Benedict in a horrible, for him, well, he could have won, right? But it definitely from the other matchups would have been, almost all of them would have been better, right?
Yeah.
Way better. But then again, I got lucky and got the Zinj. So that was, of course, a very good matchup for me. People who know me know I played Zinj for a very long time. So I already know the army very well. And then, of course, with Khorne against Zinj is just always, horrible for Zinj, a horrible time. And it was a good matchup for me, and it was a big win. I didn't win 20-0 because it's Zinj, so you can always... It had horrors in it, so it always scored some primaries and so on. He did actually fail his grand strat, which was a bit unfortunate. He was very greedy to get some high charges off, so he got some Destiny dice, and then I managed to kill those heroes pretty fast. And there's not too much to say except for, if you play Zinj, watch out for your heroes. Don't let them get blood-binded. And and apart from that,
watch out for Valkia.
Watch out for Valkia. Yeah, she was also good. And it's just not a good matchup, even if you played well with Zinj. So yeah, so that was good. That was good on our part. But he was a gent, and he also asked for advice. So it was a nice game, and we had a nice talk afterwards as well. And
I think he joked.
Could do better.
I think he joked about he could tell his grandkids about this.
That's good. That's good to know. That's just a small side note. Even if I win, I always hope that my opponents have a good time. So I try to behave at the table, make jokes, try to be I don't force to be funny, but I try to make jokes, I try to laugh, I try to just have a good time, and so my opponent can also have a good time, even if it doesn't go south. Of course, it doesn't work all the time, and some people don't like it. Of course, that's fair. I don't do it then, but I think here we had a great time.
Yeah.
Even though, and the thing is, this was a teams tournament, and we knew our armies, we knew the expectations in this, we knew the estimations. And we both knew it's a good matchup for me. So he wasn't beating himself up, wasn't having a horrible time. So that's just all about my game. The last game?
Yeah, that was Sylvaneth versus Khorne, which was fascinating to watch. And I think it's available on Twitch at Mini Paradise. I will link it down below, the Twitch channel. You can check out the games at... I think they're labeled Vereinsmeisterschaften Round 3, whatever. It was basically,
round 3,
it was Khorne versus Sylvaneth on Nexus Collapse, and I think our Sylvaneth player played it brilliantly, and he won by a couple of points. And that was just, I think,
Oh,
the best we could have hoped for in that scenario.
exactly. So usually this could be quite tough for Sylvaneth. On this battle plan though, it's actually fine because
Hmm.
Nexus Collapse, of course, the objectives turn off, or can turn off.
Yeah.
So the Sylvaneth player just hang around in his corner, and then it was just a matter of who can deactivate the objectives, and Korn cannot do any battle tactics. And then
Hmm.
in the end, Korn needs to kill all the wizards, and the Sylvaneth one was to have his wizard alive. So in the end, I think he won by 1 or 2 points because of that.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that's exactly what he needed to do.
Yeah. And that's all we
But
could. And when talking about team tournaments and about the pairing matrix, when you have matchups like that going up, and you look at them on paper, and you think to yourself, that is a rough game. Um, you don't necessarily expect people to have that same mentality going into the game. But our Sylvaneth player, we had a chat about it, of course, shortly before the game, to let
yeah,
him know what he had to prepare for and everything. But he was eager to get into it because he had played Corn at our practice day. He played against me that time when I was running Corn, and I basically taught him like all the tricks that Corn had up their sleeves. I think he was able to capitalize on that, as well as on the advice that you gave him.
yeah. I
Yeah.
think that was the feedback I got was what was for everyone there very useful was that after the pairings, so the so in this tournament we had half an hour time for pairings, and then you have a 3 hour game. So usually, especially with five people, it doesn't take half an hour to do pairings. So
Hmm.
therefore, you always have a bit time in between to go to your table, to go to the toilet, etc. Just prepare, and then you could also start the game earlier, of course. But we took a few minutes, not really long, but basically 1 or 2 minutes for a few sentences to speak with every player. So I did this especially in these matchups when we get to the higher tables, especially because as I said before in the previous video, some of our players they play games, yes, but they play in their local with their friends. So they never maybe encountered a specific army. So they never played against a specific army. And then and then they have to play it on the tournament. And then in order for this not to go super south, um,
Hmm.
I would basically just tell them a few key points of what they need to watch out, and also more importantly, how they should just play it. So for Sylvaneth, just play it defensively, just stay in your corner. He can't do anything. Um, and then again for the Nurgle matchup, you can just say just try to smash him as hard as possible. Or in other cases for ogres, it was often the case for just try to hold out on the primary, score your battle tactics. That's
Hmm.
all you need to do. Don't worry about the other stuff. Just worry to score well, to do your battle tactics well, and that's it. And I think for many of them, first of all, that helped them in their game, in their specific game, because they just did what I told them,
Yeah.
and it worked out well. And also it took their they got a bit more relaxed because they
Hmm.
got advice there, which they could trust in this case. So they didn't beat themselves up over it or over some minor rules things
Hmm.
that or how they play it or yeah, stuff like that. So I think that helped a lot. So that's just as a side note to that
Hmm.
one.
Yeah. So in the end, we managed to win four out of the 5 games. I was the only loss.
Oh
Brokenhearted, but
no.
oh well, we get over this.
Yeah.
And then it was end of day one. We were riding
Yeah.
high on 3 wins so far, unbeaten. There
Yeah.
was,
This one was also a closer window. So this was not a
yes,
cap. So I think quite important to mention that
yes.
now we arrived at the tougher opponents and
Hmm.
um
In the end, it
yeah,
was a
so
58-42.
yeah, exactly. So it was, I wouldn't say very close. It was fairly close because we
Hmm.
had two games who just went our way by 1 or 2 points. and we had one big loss, and one big, fairly big loss, right? And then one
Yeah.
big win, and another win that was basically the thing
Yeah.
that paced it out. Yeah.
And going into day 2, we had 3 teams that were unbeaten thus far. We knew we would be playing one of them. At that point, we had the highest secondary differential of uncapped points and victory points as well. So we would definitely be playing the second team that was below us, but we didn't really know whether that would be confirmed or not. And yeah. But in the evening, we received word that the pairing had gone up, and we would have to prepare for round 4, the so-called championship round. Phil mentioned it in his Brotherhood, or in his recap of the Brotherhood vlog. The round of games you can expect to decide who wins the tournament. And we played against the champions from last year, Kriegsmotek Mainz. As I've mentioned in the first video, wonderful blokes, great players altogether. And yeah, going into it, we were not happy.
I think what's very interesting. So first of all, that was at the end of, so that would have been was the first match of the second day. We were riding high, of course, but I think we weren't like, oh, we're gonna smash them, oh, we're gonna win. I think because they were the champions last year, and because I think game 1, 2, 3, they were good opponents, but we didn't feel like they were like, oh, these are the best, right? This is the best. We just beat the best teams apart from Kriegsmotek, and we already beat the other ones. That's not the case. I think we weren't like, yeah, we did well, but it was hard for us to know how good our opponents really were compared to everyone else that we didn't play.
Exactly.
So in my case, it was I was going into it being like, if we win this by just a few points, I'm still very happy. If we lose this by just a few points, I'm still very happy with my team, right? That's how I was going into it. Of course, the big goal was still there to win. It's not like it wasn't in, but I wasn't going in with the highest expectation of, oh, we win against them.
Yeah.
Because I think the difference compared to our team is just they do not have like a superstar player, you could say.
Yeah.
But they are all of them. There's no weak point in there.
Yeah.
They are all very good, consistent players who are actually really playing on the top tables in Germany. So
they've got the routine.
All of them.
They've got the killer instinct as well to go for risky maneuvers, to go for big points.
Yeah, they also had some lists that were unconventional more. So it's always a bit harder to estimate how these go, and they were also in the hand of a competent player, so that makes it harder. So noteworthy is definitely the Nighthorn from Timo.
Yes.
With 2 coaches, which people always underestimate and then they lose against it. I thankfully played against this before.
Yeah.
So I didn't underestimate it, and I could tell my players, thankfully, of what they need to watch out for. And the other one was the new cities.
Yes.
It was not that much used in the tournament, but Tom used it. And
yeah.
Talk about this more.
Yes. The cities list was unconventional in the sense that even though Cities of Sigmar had received like a house ruling regarding the command core and regarding a few finer details of the army, he didn't run any Fusiliers. He decided to go for an Excelsis Cavalier build with 2 units of 10 Cavaliers, 2 units of 5 Cavaliers, Command Corps, Warforger, Talia Vedra, and a Frigate Marshal on mount. And in my opinion, the list is very interesting. Has a lot of tools in there that I didn't necessarily expect. So, in essence,
it was definitely they definitely had different lists from the usual meta, which was
Yes.
they did have OBR, however, not null myriad.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, no, he had null myriad. Sorry, I think he changed it for null myriad for that tournament. That was
Mm-hmm.
Bastian, but he had Mortigard.
Yes.
They had Seraphon. That was very meta of them, and they had Big Va as well.
With a cabbage, though.
Yeah, that with a cabbage. Yeah. But noteworthy also because of the cities list, right? So he actually wanted to play Slaves to Darkness, the tournament, with lots of Ogroids.
Oh.
But he had 3D printed ones, but the ones he had wasn't allowed at the tournament.
Oh.
So he had to get the knights quite fast. He still had some. I think he had some people who had already built and painted some, and then he just did a few practice matches on TTS with the list. So he had like 7 practice matches of it. So it was kind of pretty last minute for him to get the list ready. But I think he performed decent with it over the whole tournament still, and it was definitely a list that's unconventional.
Yeah,
so
and
nice.
something that you shouldn't necessarily underestimate.
Oh, definitely not. No.
Yeah. So pairings, matches. Our ogre player played against OBR on.
Yeah, so the battle plans were quite tough. So
yeah.
Therefore we had Every Step is Forward as the first battle plan. We had Fountains of Frost as the second battle plan. The last one was Ice Fields. So lots of objectives on all of them, right? Every Step Forward with 4 objectives is the lowest, and they compared to them, we kind of had a bit of a slower armies.
Yes.
Because they have Nighthorn, they have Big Va, but Nighthorn Seraphon is super mobile, and then even the cities list with cavalry is quite mobile, and the Big Va as well. So therefore, it was a bit of a toughie for us in the pairings, I would say. However, the only good thing about it, we definitely knew who was their first defender, which was definitely the slow-moving OBR that doesn't want to play Fountains or Ice Fields. So we already knew that one. And I think we went for a defender, which they also expected was the Nurgle, our slowest army. And then I think the Nurgle played against the Seraphon, right?
Yes, Nurgle played against Seraphon.
Step is forward.
And the OBR played against the Ogres.
Exactly, yeah.
And then we had the second battle plan, Fountains of Frost. Our Sylvaneth ran into the Night Haunt.
Yes.
And on the streaming table, we had Tobi with his Khorne against Stylianos with his Big Va.
Yes.
And then I played Ice Fields versus Cities, which was something I didn't really expect, but I like Ice Fields. I can stay as far back as possible and shoot you.
Yeah. And so in this one, for everyone who's interested also in the pairings aspect, Benedict mentioned the mini Paradise stream.
Yes.
They actually not only did streamed the one of the games, they also streamed the pairings process. So you can see the pairings against the Vienna guys there, the Wiener Würfelwappler, and you can see the pairings against the Kriegsmatik there as well. So for everyone who's interested. And then for this round, I was on the streaming table, as Benedict mentioned, against the Big Va. I think, so just quickly about the other games, I think for the Ogres against the OBR, we definitely knew that this will be a hard one for the Ogres. They will score points, probably not win, but score points just as usual. So we were fine with that. We had the Nurgle versus the Seraphon was a toughie, I think, because the last one was, we had the matchup before, but it was on Pulse. So here on Every Step is Forward, as Nurgle, you cannot just stand on all the objectives. So the Nurgle unfortunately lost there, right? So they lost, right? They lost, right? I think they lost.
Oh yeah, right. It was a very, very close game though. Like it was decided by 2 or 3 points.
It was close, but I think he lost this one. And then we had the Sylvaneth versus the Nighthorn was even closer. So this was super close one because they won by 1 or 2 points. The Sylvaneth won on Fountains.
Yes.
and we expected that this is like
The
like
swingy
pretty
one.
much this a swingy, but it will be very even, and one of them will win by a few points, right? That was what we expected. And then our two matchups. So
Yes.
mine was against Big War, which was in my head a green, because my list is very good at killing heroes, and the Big War list has like 6 heroes usually,
Yeah.
right? 5 or 6 heroes. So I was going into this fine, I would say. My opponent was also very confident though, so just to keep that in mind. So he was also
Yeah.
quite confident. But it worked out fine for me because he gave me first turn, but did deploy Gobsprak quite aggressive. I think he mentioned that in a previous game he did this as well, and the current player declared, "Oh, I will kill that guy," as battle tactic, and then he redeployed because he
Yeah.
can reroll the redeploy with Gobsprak,
Mm-hmm.
and then the current player failed the battle tactic. But
Yeah.
I did go for the bird, but my battle tactic was surround and destroy, so I was like, and there was also his general, which was the wizard,
Yeah.
very close to Gobsprak. So he was redeploying, but then he noticed, damn, if that Thirster rolls an 8, he's killing my general now. So he didn't redeploy as far. I also dropped Valkid just as to be safe. Killed Gobsprak in the end. That was very good. This was just Thirster who has strike first. So he tried to kill him with some piggies, but he killed the piggies first.
Yeah.
That was very good for me as well. Then he went a bit more aggressive with the cabbage, killed the cannon to score 1-2 more, and be ready for the double. I won the prio, so the double never came.
Yeah.
Then the cabbage was murdered by some mortal wound, chip damage, and Scarbrand, who was very angry at that point. And Thirster was still alive. The strike first just cleared up the backline, and then at that point he was just hustling for points. And then in the end it went very well for me, and I won 16-4 or 17-3, I think. So, but it was mostly decided after 2 turns.
Yeah.
I would say, yeah. And then of course on the other flank there was 6 pigs who were just always playing against some murder-lusted blood reavers, which was just a bit sad.
You never want to hear that. Like,
yeah.
As an army that relies solely on making it into combat with a charge, preferably, it's just sad to have to sacrifice 6 pigs to go into a combat you don't necessarily want to engage.
Yeah, it was quite mean because there was also 5 brutes next to them, so they both did nothing for a turn.
You are a mean man.
Well, yes.
Yes. But yeah,
Okay.
I played against the Cities of Sigmar. Turn 1, took turn 1, shot off his general, nearly shot off the command core. Did have to play Ionis pretty aggressively. Decided to double up on a choke point and place my entire army behind it. I was always cautious of the command core, just stopping my Thunderbolt volley, which is the worst. Because ability you use once per game costs a command point. 4 up, you don't get that. Sucks pretty hard. But, yeah. Managed to kill his general, took off a couple of horses. Then in his turn, pushed Talia forward, pushed his entire army forward, tried to encapsulate me in my deployment as much as possible. Managed to kill Ionis. Did not manage to kill the entire unit of Vigilors that was standing right behind him. I think one Vigilor survived with 1 wound, basically keeping all of his 2 big units of horses locked in combat and from charging. And Talia was stuck in some Griffhounds. I don't know. Then the roll-off came. I lost the roll-off, but at that point, I personally would have given the turn away. I would have given him the double at that point, because I knew that if the double would go my way from 2 to 3, I could lift the rest of his army, because
Yeah.
what I had left in reserve basically meant that I could shoot off the command corps, or the rest of the command corps, in one turn, and then in the next easily take the Thunderbolt volley and just kill whatever was close by. He took a timeout, used it all to discuss with his captain, and said that he would take the turn, which I personally wouldn't have done, but oh well. The one Vigilor, unfortunately, was in range to a Warforger that was standing at the other end of the board. I had one hero in range to unbind, and the Vigilor had one wound left. So a GK Arcane Bolt would be able to kill him, and in an incredible oversight on my part, I didn't do a heroic willpower with my one hero I had in range.
Yeah.
So I completely biffed that. He did roll for the Arcane Bolt. Got it, of course. Had to throw a Primal at it, though. And yeah. But because he was outside of 12, that meant he couldn't do it at the beginning of the movement phase, which was also huge, because if the horses can move past the Vigilor at the in the movement phase, he just collapses on my entire army, and the game is basically over. So at the start of the shooting phase, lifted the Vigilor, perfectly fine. And then when it came to the charge phase, he whiffed all of his charges. I think it was 3 7-inch or 2 7-inch charges for the horses, and even with the reroll, he rolled a 6, or he rolled a 5 and a 1, and then he rerolled that into a double 1, which meant 2d3 mortal wounds as well.
That's just Beast of Chaos dice, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And the other unit also rolled like a 5 and a 1, so they took mortal wounds as well. He didn't make a single one of the charges, and he was basically just standing in front of my castle, and
then it was over.
Basically, yes. I did get a bit greedy, and I thought, well, if I don't kill both units of forces and Talia, he would probably be able to wipe my army in the return. So I dropped everything I could. I tried to kill the command corps with a meteor, didn't work, and I had to go for the Thunderbolt volley. He missed his 4-up. I shot Talia Vedra off in one activation. She had lost 3 wounds already before, and the max damage a unit of Vanguard Raptors can do in a single shooting phase is 12 damage, because each of them has 2 shots. And I did the 12 damage. He didn't make a single one of his saves. He didn't make a single one of his wards. And that just lifted Talia Vedra off the table, which meant
That's
that
rough, yeah.
in the shooting phase, I took off his horses.
Yeah.
And then it was just a question of who would win the roll-off, because if he did, he could score one more tactic, and that was going to be it. In the end, did win the roll-off, scored another tactic, and then in the clapback, I lifted the rest of his army, had plenty of tactics left, and it was a big win on our part, which also helped with our overall result. We did win by the closest margin in the whole tournament.
So that was super interesting for me, for example, as the captain. I was actually playing on the streaming table, was separated. You couldn't see the rest because there was a not a wall, but there was the projector wall, basically, in between. So you have some good audio quality, right? But basically, I couldn't see the other guys playing, so I was very worried. And I remember before the game, what we just mentioned is we were going into there. Well, let's just do as good as we can, but we probably don't win. And then I went out there and I was asking around, like, oh, how is it going there, and how's it? And it went better than I expected. And I'm like, wow, we could actually win this.
Yeah.
And then the game's mine wasn't over super early, but still quite early, so earlier than
Yeah.
the rest. Didn't go to time. Yours was over the same, right? Yours was
Yeah.
over even faster. And then the ones who were they were going all the way to time was the Sylvaneth, Nighthaunt, basically the other three games. And so we couldn't see which one was winning, but it was very close, and we had two big wins. So we were just hoping that everyone just gets as many points as possible, even though the OBR were probably going to win. And in the end, what Benedict just mentioned, we won this.
Yeah.
Quite very close, right? We won 57-43.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that is very close. That is 7 points in between. Yeah. 7 points in between. So it could have been any other way.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I think after this, for me it was like, damn, we can actually,
Yeah.
no, we not just can win this, we probably won this already.
Yeah.
Well, we shouldn't whiff now, but we are in the best spot possible.
Yeah.
And that was crazy good, because we didn't expect that at all.
After that round 4, I walked around the hall and talked to like the other guys from a couple of groups I'm in, and they were like, "Oh, you've beaten Kriegsmartek. Well, you're gonna surely win the event now." And I was like, "You're gonna jinx us so hard, and I will hate you for the rest of my life." Yeah. Why don't we just talk about round 5?
Yeah. So last game I think we were still super happy, still riding high from that win. But then again, as Benedict mentioned, you should never jinx it. And we were a bit anxious because of that, maybe. Well, we were focused, I think. We were very focused still.
Yes.
We actually didn't play the second one right after us on the rankings. We also didn't play the third one or the fourth one. We actually played, I think, the fifth one from the rankings down below, because all the others we already played. And we already beaten them.
Yeah.
So on this one we played against, the last one was against the Spielevereinigung Osnabrück, which have been in the hobby as a club for the longest time here in Germany.
Yeah.
And
we've played against them last year as well.
Right, yeah. Did we? Are you sure?
Yes. I remember because I played Lucas and I showed him what tyrants do. Yeah.
Okay.
In that round, we played the Spielevereinigung Osnabrück. We've played them before. Great group of people. Wonderful, all the way down to every single last player of them. They are a very large club, I believe. And they had a whole sleuth of lists that were just really awkward to play against. I think the Seraphon with Gotrek, they had Cities of Sigmar with Fusiliers and an Incarnate. And their corn list was also no joke and nothing to laugh at.
It was pretty similar to my corns.
Yeah. And what else did they have? They had a Nurgle player as well, and I believe... What else did they have?
Well, you mentioned the city, the Nurgle, the slaves, maybe?
Slaves, exactly. The Slaves to Darkness list.
With Be'lakor and 12 Varangard, basically.
Yes. One of the more classic Slaves to Darkness lists you've been seeing ever since the new book came out, basically. And yeah, in general, I think we were pretty amped going into it.
Yeah, we were. It was here as well interesting because some of these armies can be very dangerous, right? We weren't like, oh, we have a clear super green matchup because there was Gotrek in one. Varangard Knights can still do a lot of damage, stuff like that. So that was what we were a bit worried about, you could say. The battle plans were, by the way, Spring the Trap, limited resources, and Geomantic Poles. So, and again, this was also on table 1, so you can still watch the pairings and the matchup. again on the miniparadise.twitch.tv.
Yes,
Um,
it'll be linked down below. Make sure of that. So
and here we had as matchups, we had on Spring the Trap, we had our Nurgle, remember correctly,
yes,
against the Varangard slaves,
yes,
which was, from our perspective, probably the best matchup we could have gotten for Nurgle, because
Yeah.
everyone who knows, Varangard want to charge. If they cannot charge because Glock can counter charges them, they're not as good. If
Yep.
they then cannot pile at all, they suddenly get even worse. And then again, if you do a lot of mortals from disease, they just, even though they have a 4-up, they still hate it because it's
Yep.
not a 2-up. So it was very good for us. And that's also, I think, what the result was, because I think this was his highest win. I think it was like 18-2 or
Could have been, yeah.
I think so.
It's a pretty large margin for sure.
Yeah, so that was nice. Then we had, who else played on Spring the Trap?
I think it was Ogres and Seraphon.
No, they played limited resources.
Ah.
Did I play it actually? No, I played limited as well.
So it was Sylvaneth versus Khorne.
Yeah, so it was Sylvaneth versus Khorne. Yep, it was Sylvaneth versus Khorne. That was, I think, the only matchup he lost to Sylvaneth.
Yes, and he lost it by a single point.
Yeah, basically because his Warsong Revenant, I think, died in the last turn.
Yeah, and I warned him. I warned him. He needs to watch out for the Warsong Revenant, and he said he can't do anything because it's his turn. He got the cheeky double. He managed to kill the Warsong. Grand Strat failed. Grand Strat achieved. Huge swing in points.
Yeah, so that was a very close loss on our side. Would have been a big decent win, but close loss this one. And then we had me on limited resources against the Nurgle, which was, from our standpoint, a good matchup as well for me. I played Nurgle in a match before. This list actually had also no Glotkin. It also had almost no fat ones. It just had blow up, so it was very unconventional. It had, I think, 7 or 8 beasts, and also 6 drones as one unit. But it was mostly beasts and horticulus. So that was mostly the list.
Yeah.
And it's still good because they do a lot of mortal wounds, right? However, I think in this battle plan, that was the only one I outdropped I could decide. And then usually you would go let your opponent start, right? Especially if he's slow.
Yeah.
He also had a lot of affliction, yeah. But this one I actually went for going first because I can also deny magical dominance. And he placed his Horticulus on the line. So what I did is I went first, I bloodbinded, moved forward with the Thirst with Killer Instinct, bloodbinded Horticulus, charged him with the Ward Ignore guy.
Yeah.
And just put some screens in front and just killed the guy. And this gave me, it is a risky play because of course he's up for the double, he can kill my stuff afterwards. I did screen my Thirst a bit, but in the double turn it's still annoying. But what it basically meant is he had to do magical dominance. I denied that, of course. He has different other battle tactics like Glory to the Grandfather, kill more models. But the important part is I denied him 1 tree because Horticulus spawns a tree, right?
Yes, which
so
is huge for summoning.
It is huge for summoning. I also was in his territory, which gave him 1 less point as well. And I also screened out so he couldn't get into my territory easy. So I denied him lots of summoning points this way. And then and also scored me 2 blood ties because Horticulus 0, I'm Reapers of Vengeance, 2 blood ties. And then in his turn, he was in the whole game he struggled a bit with battle tactics, probably because of that, because I think that surprise basically shifted his game plan a bit. And then he killed stuff in front of my Thirster in his first turn, but he said he wants to let into the Maelstrom, but he was also too afraid to charge my Thirster on the other side, who had strike first. And the only hero he had left to charge was blow up, so he had to he would have to charge with blow up into the strike first Thirster.
Oh
which is a
no.
Boomthirster gets +1 to hit against heroes. So he didn't want to do that, but this means he failed his battle tactic. So
Mm-hmm.
it was a lose-lose situation. And then he got the double. No, actually he didn't get the double. I got the turn, and
Mm-hmm.
I cleared house
Yeah.
because I killed quite a lot of stuff to get, got the boom, did damage, and from then on it was always in my favor because I was also up on primaries.
Mm-hmm.
I was up on battle tactics. He
Yeah.
failed, I think, another one in between, another battle tactic. He failed Glory to the Grandfather, I think. And in the end, I won pretty big just because I was just so ahead on points, just because of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my matchup.
Yeah. My matchup was against Cities with Incarnate. Um, didn't really look forward to playing Cities again, especially since this was a Fusiliers build, which
Yeah.
with Return Fire can just make your day so much worse. So my only option really was to try and go for all of his heroes turn one, which I did. I had dropped him and tried to deny him as many points as possible. I shot off his general turn one and chipped off every single other hero, and yeah. In
You also leveled down the Incarnate, right?
No.
Oh no. Okay.
Not in turn one,
Okay.
because this happened on his turn one. He he basically cast the. I only had Ionis in range to unbind, so my choice was I'm gonna either unbind the Mortal Wounds in Addition spell, or I'm going to unbind the Endless spell, which the Incarnate is gonna eat, and therefore deny him an additional level, and so much more possibilities with the Incarnate to get it in turn one. So what I did was I took the Heroic Willpower on Ionis, and I practically was able to unbind his Mortal Wounds in Addition spell, the Flaming Blazing Weapons, or whatever it's called. And from there, just went a little bit downhill for him, I believe. And yeah. He did instant kill his Sorceress, which then put his Incarnate in an enraged state, and meant he could run and charge his own Endless spell, piled in, or did his Monstrous Rampage, and failed. Incarnate went down. Incarnate went down a level, and then it was just stuck in a couple of Gryph-hounds that I put in front of my heroes as a small screen. Then it came down to the roll-off. Basically, I lost. He took the turn. And at the beginning of his turn, he realized, I forgot to shoot my Fusiliers last round. I was like, yeah, you kind of did. We've had a turn in between. I'm not letting you shoot again. And yeah, we went through the phases again. He cast Blazing Weapons again this time, which I couldn't necessarily stop because it was auto-cast. I myself decided to unbind the Shards of Valagar so the Incarnate couldn't level up under any circumstances. Managed that with Master of Magic because rerolls are fun. And yeah, after movement and when he went to go shooting, I looked at his army and I was like, "Are you sure you're wholly within 12 of the Warforger for blazing weapons?" And he measured himself and he was like, "I'm not. This sucks." And I was like, "Well, sure, yes. I'm gonna take that, of course." And as much as I hate being that guy, we're playing the final table of the event, and yeah, The Incarnate leveling down, him losing the General turn 1, just meant that the game was already stacked against him, I'd like to say, or I'd like to believe. And yeah, the Incarnate did not level down at in that combat phase when the dogs exploded and did 2 mortal wounds. His dice weren't that bad. But
I think it can't even with 2 wounds, but...
Really?
I think it needs 3, right?
Oh yeah, because you need to roll equal or lower. Yeah. So, it didn't take enough wounds, unfortunately. But, his Fusiliers also only did, I think, a single wound on Ionis. And...
Well, yeah, without mortals.
Yeah, it is rough. And yeah, in my return, I took down the Incarnate, killed Pontifex, I lifted a unit of Steel Helms, the Command Corps was already taken out turn 1, and then it was just him chasing points. And when the roll-off from 2 into 3 came, I took it. And basically...
Was it 20-0, right?
Yeah, I think the differential was 25 points or something like that. And on Pulse, it's insane. Yeah. Like...
Yeah, it doesn't matter that much. And then it sounded like a long game, but you were done after like an hour.
Yeah.
I think, right?
It didn't take us long, especially since he skipped one of his shooting phases.
Yeah, of course.
And he was, I can honestly say the dice killed that matchup for him. Like the Incarnate failing to roll a 5 on 2 dice is really, really rough. And yeah.
And then as the last remaining matchups, we had our Nurgle played against the Slave. So that was, I think, we mentioned it. It was a big win, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then the last matchup, and that was the one that is on stream, if anyone wants to watch. That was the Seraphon on limited resources against the Ogres.
Yeah.
And as you can tell, this is probably a horrible matchup for the Ogres, especially if this is not monster trucks, because they are slow moving. Mm-hmm. So this was a loss, unfortunately, for the Ogres.
Yeah.
As we said, I think in the beginning, and that is exactly what happened. The Ogres always got often the short end of the stick, and it didn't even have much meat on it in this case, unlike the Nurgle one.
Yeah.
So it wasn't good, but he always scored his points. I think he lost this he actually scored. Did he score 515? I think, or something like that.
Yeah.
416.
Yeah.
Still okay.
No. 14-6, I think it was.
Okay. So it was 14-6. So
rather close, actually.
So that's still pretty good just from a scoring perspective. And then in the end, the result was there for we capped again.
Yes.
So that was pretty good. It was pretty clear now, if I would say.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that was awesome, and that was the last game. We were the only ones who went 5-0.
Yes.
In this one.
And so, judging by our performance, we can now proudly present the result of our labors.
Which is this beauty.
Yes!
So big that I can't even hold it in frame.
There you go. Perfect. The Storytellers. The Austrian club from the little village, 5 hours in the mountains. German club champions.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy.
Woo.
Just and worthy to note what Benedict mentioned in the previous videos. The names the club name will be engraved upon it. So we'll try to show this. So the previous champion is here. I hope it's in frame.
Yes.
And that is Kriegsmottek with the year 2023. So next year, when we will bring this back to the TOs, they will engrave our name there. So the Storytellers will be 2024, and then we can fight for this again.
Mm-hmm.
And ideally, there will be 3 times at least. So this
Yeah.
will all be storytellers. That's the goal now. As you can tell, we went for let's just make top 8 and have fun to let's win
Yeah.
again.
Actually
Um,
taking out the tournament.
so that was crazy because, and I think people were expecting us to do well just because just because of our names, I think.
Yeah.
Mostly, and we did get second last year as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think they were expecting us to actually win because
Yeah.
last year I think Kriegsmotek was on a pretty, they were tearing up quite good, and there
Mhm.
was also, because we mentioned it also in the previous video, it was also one of the other favorite teams which unfortunately did not do as well as people had hoped.
Mhm.
That was the Kellerkinder.
Yeah.
But people were thinking before the event, or even were thinking that these two would duke it out at the top tables.
Mhm.
So us storming in there and just taking it was incredible, right?
Yeah. And something that you can also mention is that due to the nature of the team tournament format and the random draw at the beginning, I think that helped us as well. Because in their round 1, the Kellerkinder were drawn into a closer matchup, I think, than other teams.
Tougher one, yeah.
Exactly. And that meant that they played similar matches for the rest of the tournament. Whereas,
Yeah.
as much as I hate to say it, we had a pretty breezy day 1 in 2 games at least, or 2 rounds at least. And
Yeah.
that gave us like a huge push, both in points as well as ego, because we were like, hey, the 3 guys that were joking about, hey, we need to make at least 7 points, were winning games.
Yeah, it is worthy to note that we thought they played Dice Dealer first round.
Yes.
So the final result was Storytellers number 1, as it should be.
Yes.
Xmotech number 2 in the end. They won their last round.
Mhm.
Dice Dealer, which was the opponent of the Kellock in the round 1, so this is the tough matchup that Benedict mentioned, actually came third. This was the team also we lost last year too. They also
Yes.
were quite good last year.
Mhm.
So good so huge props to them. That was the top 3, and then we had. I'm not gonna go through everything because you can look this up.
Yes.
But it is quite interesting because you say that we didn't play against that tough matchups, but then again our second game came 7th in the end,
Mhm.
and we did have the strongest strength of schedule in the end still.
Yes.
So of course, if you play top tables, you will always be quite high up there.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, I don't think we need to like say that we just won it because we had easy matchups.
Yeah, that's true. We did give our sweat, blood, and tears to it, and in the end, we managed to pull through, and we had a great time as well. Like as I mentioned in the previous video, 2 people had never been to a team tournament before.
Yep.
They had a great time. Like we rented an Airbnb for the weekend. We're always like hanging out together. And we had a great time because we're all just nerds.
I think also what I was also happy about is the 2 other people never played team tournaments, and they were like, "Wow, this is just so good because you win together.
Yes.
It's way better. Even if you lose your game, you win the round. You win with your team, and you can see how the other people do. You're not just self-centered, right? And your friends, you care even more about your friends' games than you would usually.
Mhm.
Right? And then the other thing I was very, very happy with, the other player who did play teams before, so
Yes.
Alex, he, before the tournament, or after his last big tournament, he was very deflated. He was really unhappy because his result wasn't what he thought it would be. He wasn't he was even thinking of
he wanted to quit Age of Sigmar altogether, I think.
Yeah, after the club championship at least. So he wanted to go
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah, he said he will play this with us together, then he might drop. But in the end, he was having fun. The list was good for him. In the end, he went
4-1.
4-1 as well.
Yeah.
So we had Nurgle 4-1, you went 4-1,
Yes.
the August went 3-2, and the Sylvaneth also went 4-1,
Yes.
even though these are very weird lists.
Mm-hmm.
And I went 5-0.
Woo!
Yeah.
A performance
as the
befitting a
person,
captain.
as the person who does the pairings going 5-0 is always a bit of a, well, I got the good matchups. Thanks to myself. No. In the end, the plan worked out, and I'm super happy that that these players had so much fun, as well. Yeah. Yeah.
At this point, I do want to like, from the bottom of my heart, extend a thank you to you, because when you messaged me last year and asked me like, "Hey, do you want to go to a team tournament with me?" I jumped at the opportunity because as much as we joke that there's so much difference between Austrians and Germans, and we always duke it out at our local tournaments, we still can find like a common ground in the hobby and in our personalities to say, hey, we're gonna go there and we're gonna play and we're gonna win this, or we're gonna attempt to do our best.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I also want to give a big shout out to just the TOs, because
Yes.
because this one we have the Games Island, which helps in the background with prices and so often, but especially the Mini Paradise team,
Yes.
who really do. So here in Germany, they are probably the biggest and the most professional tournament organizers.
Yes.
By far. And yeah, so this is whole community founded. And it's just great that these people, because they actually also want to play. I know most of them actually would love to play as well, but they are still doing the TO work, so that's props for them. I also love the fact that we have some coverage of this, because in Germany the hobby is not the biggest, but the fact that we have live streaming on the table and have coverage of all of this is, I think it's great. So big shout out to them.
Yeah, at that point, just mentioning by name, Cello and Eloy for basically organizing the entire event, for managing the streaming equipment, for just being energetic and being hype men about the entire event for an entire year, and even before then, the entire work that goes into the event. Huge props to them. Huge thank you to the judges, Henning and Marius, who are absolute babes and rules wizards in their own right, and so many other helping hands that help with like arranging the entire like hall with tables and mats and terrain and everything. I think even Cello's parents were there to help with beverages, and they sold like cakes, like a garage sale. And it was wonderful, and it's been a wonderful experience since its first iteration. And now that it's happened a second time, I'm definitely going for a third. Like,
we have to.
Yeah.
So now we are also kind of forced to go, because I would love to keep it, but we have to prove it that we can keep the trophy.
Yeah, I am eager. I am actually very eager.
And I think all the people in our little club are also very eager.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, that was basically all there is to it. That was the German Club Championships 2024, as presented to you by Tobi and myself. Managed to get a wonderful first place, an improvement from last year somehow, which we didn't really thought was possible. Had a great time, had to overcome challenges in preparation, but we pulled through. Yes! And yeah, Tobi, at which events will people catch you next?
Actually, I'm probably on so for tournaments, I'm probably on a bit of a break for this month and next month. So probably my next tournament will be in Denmark.
Oh.
And then of course I'll see how it goes from then on. I don't have too much planned until then, but
Yeah.
I'm still playing a lot of TTS tournaments, so I'm still getting practice. Yeah, and that's it from mostly for me.
Lovely. I will be heading to a couple of tournaments. There's a training weekend for Team Austria. Not sure what that's about. I don't need that. But I will be heading to Brothers War in Manchester next month. I don't know when this is coming out, but it's happening around March time. Until then, you may have already heard from our socials that Phil is doing a video with another guest. And we might have a little bit of a tournament preview with Math and I talking about Team Lit. We'll have to wait and see how we can arrange everything because Matt is a very, very busy man. And yeah, of course, biggest event of the year, the Age of Sigmar Worlds are coming up closer and closer. You will probably see Tobi in some capacity at the German team. Captain,
Definitely.
non-playing coach, captain, playing Corn, pushing around models.
Probably playing captain.
Yes, we love a playing captain. And myself with the Austrian team, of course. We will be doing a preview together with Math and Phil to just get an insight into how Team Austria functions versus Team Wales and Team England, which might be interesting for people to look at. And yeah, if you're starved for content until then, you can check out the part 1 of this video if you haven't already, or just rewatch it to hear Tobi and I's serenading voice. I don't know. But we also have a couple of other videos coming up. If it's already been released, Bloodshed in the Shires, Phil's tournament recap is also up there. And we might have a couple of other tournament previews featuring Phil and a special guest. Yes. Until then, much love for myself. Tobi.
Goodbye. Thanks for listening.
Yes.
Or watching.
This might go up as a podcast, so... Alright. Thank you all so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Leave your love here for the TOs, for any organization that you might support. And we'll see you all later. And don't forget,
Bye.
you don't get any extra points for being a cunt.